My ex-husband dumped me for being poor. He still invited me to his wedding with a wealthy socialite to mock me. But when I arrived at the wedding in a Rolls Royce with triplets, he panicked. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how I got there. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesday was my double shift day at the diner, and I'd just gotten home, my feet screaming, my lower back throbbing in that specific way that only happens when you're 6 months pregnant and you've been on your feet for 14 hours straight. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive, the kind of paper that whispers money when you touch it. My name was written in gold calligraphy, Ms. Sarah Mitchell. Not Mrs. Sarah Chen, like I'd been for 5 years. He'd already erased me. I knew what it was before I opened it. David had texted me 2 weeks earlier, a message that still burned in my mind. Moving on with my life. Hope you can be happy for me. No apology for leaving me when I needed him most. No acknowledgement that he'd walked out the day I lost my job, calling me a financial anchor, dragging down his future. Inside the invitation was a note, handwritten on matching stationery. Sarah, I wanted you to see what real success looks like. Victoria and I are starting our life together at the Rosewood Estate. I know you're struggling, but I've arranged for valet parking, so don't worry about your car situation. It would mean a lot to Victoria to have everyone there. D. My hands started shaking. The cruelty was so casual, so deliberate. He knew I'd sold my car 3 months ago to pay rent. He knew I was taking buses everywhere. That my car situation meant walking 20 minutes to the bus stop in the rain because I couldn't afford rideshares. I sat down at my tiny kitchen table, the invitation still in my hand. The apartment was so small, I could see every corner of my life from that chair. The futon that doubled as my bed, the clothes drying on a rack because the laundromat was too expensive, the empty refrigerator humming in the corner. This was what he'd left me with. This was what I'd become in his eyes. Someone so pathetic, he felt comfortable inviting me to watch him marry a woman whose family owned half the real estate in the city. I pressed my hand against my belly, feeling the movement inside. He didn't know about the pregnancy. He'd left before I even suspected. And after the way he abandoned me, after he'd screamed that I was bleeding him dry, and that he couldn't build a future with someone who couldn't hold down a job, I decided he didn't deserve to know. The doctor's appointment last week had been surreal. Congratulations, she'd said, smiling. You're having triplets. Triplets. 3 babies. I'd sat in that examination room, staring at the ultrasound screen, trying to understand how I was going to survive this. My health insurance had lapsed. I was working for tips. My landlord was already asking about next month's rent. And David was marrying a socialite at an estate that probably cost more than I'd earn in my lifetime. I should throw the invitation away. I should ignore it, block his number, pretend he doesn't exist. That would be the smart thing to do, the healthy thing. But sitting there in my cramped apartment, feeling my babies move inside me, something else stirred. Not anger exactly. Something quieter. A need to prove to myself that I'd survived him, that I was more than the broken thing he'd left behind. I would go to that wedding. I would walk in with my head high, and I would show him that he hadn't destroyed me. I picked up my phone and texted back, "I'll be there." His response came immediately. "Really? I mean, great. See you there?" I could practically hear the smug satisfaction in his words. He thought I was coming to grovel, to witness my own irrelevance. I put my phone down and closed my eyes, trying to calm the racing of my heart. The babies were active now, all 3 of them shifting and pressing. I imagined them asking me what I was doing, whether this was a terrible mistake. I don't know, I whispered to them. But I need to do this. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing, a notification from my bank. I almost didn't look, dreading another overdraft fee, another reminder of how close to the edge I was living. But this notification was different. Wire transfer received 850,000 euro. I stared at the screen, certain it was a mistake. Some kind of scam or a technical glitch. My hands were shaking as I opened the banking app and saw the deposit, real and solid, in my account. There was a reference number and a law firm's name, Whitmore and Associates, estate of Margaret Chen. Margaret Chen, my father's aunt. The woman I'd met exactly once at my wedding to David. She'd been in her 90s then, sharp as glass, and she'd pulled me aside during the reception. "You're too good for him," she'd whispered, "but you'll figure that out." I'd laughed it off, drunk on champagne and new marriage optimism. Now she was gone, and she'd left me everything. I sat on my futon, the phone still in my hand, and started to cry. Not from relief, though that was there. Not from joy, though I felt that too. I cried because for the first time in 6 months, since David had walked out, since I'd lost my job, since I'd discovered I was pregnant and alone, I felt something other than fear. I felt possibility. And that's when I knew I wasn't just going to that wedding. I was going to show them all exactly who I was. But first, I had 3 babies to prepare for and a life to rebuild. The letter from the law firm arrived that afternoon, confirming the inheritance. Margaret had died peacefully 3 weeks ago. The money was mine, free and clear. No strings, no conditions. Just one line in her will. To Sarah Chen, who deserves better. I pressed the letter to my chest and thought about that wedding invitation, still sitting on my kitchen table. David had wanted me to see what real success looked like. He had no idea what was coming. The money sat in my account like a secret I was afraid to touch. For 3 days, I went to work at the diner, took the bus, came home to my cramped apartment, and stared at my phone, checking over and over that the numbers were real. $850,000. It was more than I'd ever imagined having. It was freedom. It was security. It was everything I'd been desperate for. But I was terrified. I'd grown up without money. My parents had worked multiple jobs just to keep food on the table. I'd put myself through community college waiting tables. When I married David, I thought I'd finally found stability. He had a good job, ambitions, plans, but his plans had always involved me sacrificing for his future. Quit your job to support my networking. Don't go back to school, we need to save. Move to a cheaper place so I can invest in my career. And then he'd left me, calling me the anchor. Now I had money, real money, and I had no idea what to do with it. Every instinct screamed at me to hoard it, to hide it, to pretend it didn't exist until I absolutely needed it. On the 4th day, I woke up at 3 a.m. with contractions. Not labor. Braxton Hicks, the doctor had warned me about them. But they were intense, wrapping around my belly like a vice, making me gasp into my pillow. I lay there in the dark, breathing through them, one hand on my stomach, feeling the babies shift and press. "Not yet," I whispered to them. "It's too soon. We're not ready." I was only 26 weeks along. The babies needed to stay inside for at least 10 more weeks, preferably 12. Every day mattered. Every day they stayed was a day their lungs developed, their brains grew, their chances of survival increased. When the contractions finally subsided an hour later, I couldn't fall back asleep. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of water. I'd given up coffee weeks ago, another small loss in a sea of losses, and opened my laptop. I started searching. Premature triplets, neonatal intensive care, survival rates for babies born at 26 weeks. The statistics were terrifying. The costs were worse. Even with insurance, which I didn't have, a NICU stay for triplets could run into hundreds of thousands of dollars. Without insurance, it could be millions. The inheritance that had felt like salvation suddenly felt fragile, insufficient. I thought about David, sleeping peacefully somewhere, probably in Victoria's penthouse apartment with its view of the city. He had no idea these babies existed. He had no idea I was sitting here at 3 a.m, trying to calculate whether I had enough money to keep our children alive if something went wrong. Our children. No, not mine. I closed the laptop and made a decision. The next morning, I called the law firm that had handled Aunt Margaret's estate. A polite receptionist transferred me to Mr. Whitmore himself, a man with a gentle voice that reminded me of my grandfather. "Ms. Chen," he said, "I'm so glad you called. I wanted to express my condolences about Margaret. She spoke of you, not often, but when she did, it was always with great fondness." "She barely knew me," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "She knew enough." There was a smile in his voice. "She told me once that she could see a person's character in a single conversation. She said you had spine. Her word, not mine." I didn't feel like I had spine. I felt like I was barely holding together. "Mr. Whitmore, I need advice. I'm pregnant, with triplets, high-risk pregnancy, and I don't have health insurance." There was a pause. "I see. Well, first things first. You need to take care of that immediately. I can recommend an excellent broker who specializes in high-risk cases. It won't be cheap, but given your current assets, it's manageable." "I don't want to spend it all before they're even born," I admitted. "I need this money to last, to take care of them." "Of course." His voice was warm, professional. "May I speak candidly, Ms. Chen?" "Please." "Margaret left you that money specifically because she believed you would use it wisely. But wisdom isn't just about hoarding resources. It's about investing in your future. Your children are your future. Spend what you need to spend to ensure they arrive safely and healthy. Everything else can be planned for." I felt my throat tighten. "Thank you. One more thing," he said. "Margaret also left instructions for me to assist you with any legal or financial planning, free of charge. It was part of her estate arrangement. So please don't hesitate to call. I'm here to help." I hung up feeling lighter than I had in days. By the end of the week, I had health insurance. Comprehensive, expensive, but it covered everything. Prenatal care, delivery, NICU if needed. The broker Mr. Whitmore recommended had been efficient and kind, walking me through every option without making me feel stupid for not understanding. I also had my first appointment with a new OB/GYN, Dr. Patricia Morrison, who specialized in high-risk multiple births. Her office was in a medical building downtown, the kind of place with marble floors and original art on the walls. I felt out of place in my thrift store maternity dress, but Dr. Morrison greeted me like I belonged there. She was in her 50s, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and steady hands that immediately put me at ease. "Triplets," she said, reviewing my file. "And you're 26 weeks. How are you feeling?" "Terrified," I admitted. She smiled. "That's normal. Let's take a look and see how everyone's doing." The ultrasound took longer than any I'd had before. Dr. Morrison measured each baby carefully, checking heartbeats, positions, fluid levels. I watched the screen, trying to read her expression, terrified she'd find something wrong. "Well," she said finally, "I have good news, and news that will require some adjustment." My heart sank. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. But you need to understand that carrying triplets to full term is extremely rare. Most triplet pregnancies deliver between 32 and 34 weeks. That's perfectly viable, but it means you need to prepare for an early delivery." "How early?" I whispered. "If we can get you to 34 weeks, that's ideal. Anything before 32, we'd want you on hospital bed rest." "And Sarah," she looked at me directly, her eyes kind but serious. "You need to stop working. Now. You're on your feet too much. Your blood pressure is elevated, and you're showing signs of early cervical shortening." "I can't stop working. I need the money." "Sarah." Her voice was firm. "You have triplets depending on you to keep them safe. Working 14-hour shifts at a diner is not safe. Not for you, not for them." I felt tears burning in my eyes. The inheritance was supposed to be for after they were born, for raising them, for giving them a life, not for sitting at home doing nothing while my savings dwindled. But Dr. Morrison was right. I knew she was right. "Okay," I whispered, "I'll quit." I gave my notice that afternoon. My manager, a gruff man named Pete who'd hired me when I was desperate, surprised me by hugging me. "You're doing the right thing, kid," he said. "Those babies need their mama healthy." My last shift was on a Saturday. The regular customers had taken up a collection, $347 in an envelope with a card that said, "For the babies." I cried in the bathroom for 10 minutes before I could pull myself together enough to say goodbye. Walking out of that diner felt like cutting my last connection to my old life. The life where I worked for everything, where I earned my place, where I didn't depend on anyone. Now I was unemployed, pregnant with triplets, and living off an inheritance from a woman I'd barely known. I should have felt grateful. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt unmoored, lost. That night, I lay on my futon. I really needed to buy a proper bed, and scrolled through Facebook. I shouldn't have. I knew I shouldn't have. But I couldn't help myself. David's page was public. He'd posted a photo from his engagement party. Him and Victoria on a yacht, her ring catching the sunlight, both of them laughing. The caption read, "Found my forever. Wedding countdown? 8 weeks." The comments were full of congratulations. Friends I'd thought were our friends, now gushing over his new relationship like I'd never existed. One comment caught my eye, from Victoria herself. "Can't wait to start our real life together. No more dead weight." Dead weight. I closed the app and put my phone face down on the table. The babies were moving, all 3 of them active tonight. I placed both hands on my belly, feeling them tumble and kick. "I'm not dead weight," I told them. "And neither are you. We're going to be okay." But as I lay there in the dark, I couldn't shake the image of David and Victoria on that yacht, living the life he'd always wanted. The life he'd said I prevented him from having. The wedding was in 8 weeks. I had 8 weeks to figure out who I was now, who I wanted to be when I walked through those doors. I picked up my phone again and opened my banking app. The inheritance was still there, minus the insurance premiums and medical bills, still more than enough. On impulse, I searched for apartments in better neighborhoods, places with security, with elevators, with room for 3 cribs and a proper kitchen, places where I wouldn't be afraid to raise my children alone. I found one 20 minutes away, a 3-bedroom apartment in a building with a doorman and a park across the street. It was expensive, 3 times what I was paying now, but it was perfect. Bright, safe, with windows that actually opened and closets big enough to exist. I scheduled a viewing for Monday. Then I searched for something else. Rolls-Royce rental near me. The results were limited. This wasn't the kind of city where people regularly rented Rolls-Royces. But there was one company, a luxury car service, that catered to weddings and special events. I clicked through their website, looking at the prices. Obscene. Absolutely obscene. $800 for 4 hours. I added it to my list of possibilities. Finally, before I could talk myself out of it, I opened my email and started a new message to David. "David, thank you for the invitation. I'll be attending. I'm looking forward to celebrating this new chapter in your life. Sarah." Short, polite, giving nothing away. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. His response came within minutes. "Wow, okay, that's mature of you. Victoria will be glad you're coming. She said it's important to have closure with the past. See you there." Closure. They wanted closure. They wanted to close the book on me, to file me away as a chapter they'd moved past. I put my hand on my belly again, feeling the steady movement of my 3 babies, my 3 secrets, my 3 futures. 8 weeks, I whispered to them. In 8 weeks, they're going to see exactly what closure looks like. But the next morning, I woke up to cramps again. Worse this time. And when I stood up to go to the bathroom, I saw the spotting. I called Dr. Morrison's emergency line with shaking hands, and within an hour, I was in her office, lying on an examination table while she performed an ultrasound. "The babies are fine," she said immediately, seeing my face. "Heartbeats are strong. But Sarah, your cervix is shortening faster than I'd like. I'm putting you on modified bed rest. No heavy lifting, no stress, limited activity." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means you stay home, you rest, you keep those babies cooking as long as possible." She paused. "I also want to see you twice a week from now on. We need to monitor this closely." I nodded, but inside, panic was rising. Bed rest. For potentially 2 more months. Alone in my apartment with nothing but time and fear. Is there anyone who can stay with you? Dr. Morrison asked gently. Family? Friends? I thought about my parents, gone for 5 years now. My few friends had drifted away during my marriage to David. He'd never liked them, said they were holding me back, and David himself, well, no, I said quietly. There's no one. Dr. Morrison's expression softened. Then we'll make sure you have the support you need. I'm going to refer you to a home health nurse who can check on you between appointments. And Sarah, please call me anytime, day or night. If something feels wrong, I want to know immediately. I left her office with a stack of pamphlets about bed rest, warning signs of preterm labor, and what to do in an emergency. The apartment viewing I'd scheduled was now impossible. I couldn't move, couldn't pack, couldn't do anything but sit and wait and try to keep my babies safe. I sat in my car in the parking garage. I'd taken a rideshare to the appointment, another expense I'd have to get used to, and called the landlord of the apartment I'd wanted to see. I'm sorry, I told him. I can't make the viewing. Medical issues. No problem, he said. When would you like to reschedule? I don't know. Weeks from now, maybe. I'm so sorry. Hey, listen. His voice was kind. I've got a pregnant tenant moving out next month. I understand. The apartment will still be here. You call me when you're ready. Okay? I thanked him and hung up, and then sat there in the parking garage, trying not to cry. Everything was slipping away again. The plans I'd started to make, the future I'd started to imagine. All of it dependent on these babies staying inside, staying safe, giving me just a little more time. That evening, I settled onto my futon with my laptop and started doing the only thing I could do. Research. I read everything I could find about bed rest, about preterm labor, about NICU care. I joined online support groups for mothers of multiples. I created a budget spreadsheet, calculating every possible expense from now until the babies were 6 months old. And in a separate document, hidden in a folder I titled Recipes, I started planning for the wedding. Because even if I couldn't move apartments, even if I couldn't do anything but lie here and try to keep my children safe, I was still going to that wedding. I was still going to show David exactly what he'd walked away from. The home health nurse Dr. Morrison had arranged arrived on Wednesday. Her name was Angela, and she was probably in her 60s, with warm brown skin and the kind of competent calm that made me trust her immediately. Triplets, she said, reviewing my chart. Lord have mercy. You're carrying the whole nursery in there. I laughed despite myself. That's what it feels like. She checked my blood pressure, measured my belly, listened to each baby's heartbeat. Her hands were gentle but thorough, professional. You're doing good, she said. Baby sounds strong. But honey, you need to take this bed rest seriously. I know it's hard. I know you want to be up doing things. But right now, your job is to be a good incubator. Everything else can wait. There's a wedding I need to go to, I said. In 7 weeks. Angela raised an eyebrow. A wedding. My ex-husband's wedding. Oh. Her expression shifted, understanding dawning. Is that wise? Probably not, I admitted, but I need to go. I need closure. Closure, Angela repeated, and something in her tone made me think she didn't buy it. Well, we'll see what Dr. Morrison says. But if you're going anywhere in 7 weeks, these babies need to stay put until then, which means you follow my rules. Understand? Yes, ma'am. Good girl. She patted my hand. I'll be back Friday. You call me if anything changes before then. Anything at all. After Angela left, I lay on my futon staring at the ceiling. 7 weeks, 49 days. 49 days to keep these babies safe. 49 days to plan. 49 days until David saw what he'd thrown away. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hi, Sarah. This is Victoria. David gave me your number. I just wanted to reach out personally and say how wonderful it is that you're coming to the wedding. It takes real maturity to celebrate your ex's happiness. I really respect that. Looking forward to meeting you. XO. I stared at the message, reading it over and over, trying to parse whether it was genuine or another subtle twist of the knife. The XO felt like mockery, The real maturity felt like condescension. The whole message felt like Victoria marking her territory, reminding me that she'd won. I typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, looking forward to it. Then I blocked her number. I didn't need her fake friendship. I didn't need her pity or her condescension. In 7 weeks, she'd understand exactly who I was. But that night, alone in my apartment, with my babies moving restlessly inside me and the weight of bed rest pressing down like a physical thing, I finally let myself cry. Not from sadness, not from anger, from the sheer overwhelming terror of doing this alone. Bed rest, I learned, was not rest at all. It was a special kind of torture designed to make you hyper-aware of every second passing, every twinge in your body, every shift of the babies inside you that might signal danger. I'd been on modified bed rest for 3 weeks, and I'd become an expert at lying still while my mind raced in circles. Angela came twice a week. Dr. Morrison saw me every Tuesday and Friday. Between their visits, I had nothing but time and the internet. I knew things now that I'd never wanted to know. I knew that cervical length below 2.5 centimeters was cause for concern. Mine was 2.3 and shortening. I knew that babies born at 30 weeks had a 95% survival rate, but often faced complications. I knew that every single day I could keep them inside mattered more than anything else I would ever do. The wedding was 4 weeks away. I was 30 weeks pregnant. The math was cutting it close, dangerously close. "You're thinking about that wedding again," Angela said during her Thursday visit. She was checking my blood pressure, and apparently my face gave me away. "How can you tell?" "Your pressure spikes every time I mention it." She unwrapped the cuff from my arm. 136 over 88. That's higher than I like. "Is it dangerous?" "Not yet, but stress isn't helping those babies stay put." She sat down on the folding chair next to my futon. I'd bought actual furniture now, it was being delivered next week, and gave me a long look. "You want to tell me why this wedding matters so much?" I'd been asking myself the same question for weeks. "He humiliated me," I said finally. "He left me when I was at my lowest. He blamed me for everything wrong in his life. And now he's marrying into money and acting like he's won some kind of prize. And you want to show him he was wrong about you." "Yes." The word came out fiercer than I intended. Angela nodded slowly. "I understand that. Lord knows I do. But honey, you need to ask yourself something. Is proving him wrong worth risking your babies?" The question hit me like cold water. "I'm not risking them," I said, but even I could hear the uncertainty in my voice. "You're stressed. You're anxious. Your blood pressure is climbing. You're spending your energy on a man who doesn't deserve another second of your thoughts." She reached over and patted my hand. "I'm not saying don't go. I'm saying make sure you know why you're going. Because if it's for him, that's the wrong reason. But if it's for you, to prove something to yourself, to close a door that needs closing, then that's different." After she left, I lay on my futon and thought about what she'd said. Was I doing this for David? Or for myself? I picked up my phone and, against my better judgment, checked his Facebook again. Another post from yesterday. A photo of him and Victoria at a charity gala, both of them in formal wear, surrounded by people who looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine. The caption read, "Amazing night supporting the Children's Hospital Foundation with my beautiful fiancé. Feeling blessed. The Children's Hospital Foundation, the same hospital where my babies would likely spend their first weeks of life if they came early." The irony was almost funny. I kept scrolling through the comments. So many people congratulating him, telling him how perfect they looked together, how happy they seemed. And then I saw one comment that made me stop cold. It was from David's mother, Patricia. "So proud of you, David. You've come so far from those difficult years. Victoria is exactly the partner you deserve. Can't wait for the wedding." Those difficult years. She met me. Our marriage. I was the difficult years. He'd overcome. I closed the app and put my phone face down. Angela was right. I needed to figure out why I was doing this. That night, I had a dream. In it, I was at the wedding, but I couldn't see. There were people everywhere, voices echoing, and I was trying to find my way through the crowd. But my belly was huge, impossibly huge, and I couldn't move fast enough. I kept calling for help, but no one could hear me. Then David was there, standing in front of me in his tuxedo. "You shouldn't have come," he said. Not angry, just matter of fact. "This isn't your place anymore." I woke up gasping, my heart pounding, the babies moving frantically inside me as if they'd felt my panic. It was 3 a.m. I got up carefully. I was allowed short trips to the bathroom and kitchen, and made myself chamomile tea, decaf. No caffeine, no alcohol, no deli meat, no soft cheese. Pregnancy had turned me into someone who second-guessed everything I put in my mouth. I sat at my kitchen table with my tea and my laptop and did something I should have done weeks ago. I Googled Victoria. Victoria Chen Hartley. She'd already hyphenated her name in preparation for the marriage, apparently. 28 years old, graduate of Princeton, board member of 3 charitable foundations, daughter of Richard and Catherine Hartley, whose names appeared on half the buildings in the city. Her Instagram was public, a carefully curated gallery of her perfect life. Yoga on private beaches, fundraising galas, brunch with friends who all looked like models. And in the recent photos, David. David at the opera, David at a ski resort, David looking happier than I'd ever seen him. I scrolled back further, curious about her life before David. And that's when I found it. A photo from 2 years ago. Before I'd even met David, I realized with a start. It was from some charity event, and in the background of a group photo, barely visible, was David. He was a waiter, wearing a server's uniform, carrying a tray of champagne glasses, looking at Victoria with an expression I recognized. Hunger. I zoomed in, making sure I wasn't imagining it. But no, it was definitely him. And the date on the photo was from 6 months before he and I had even matched on the dating app where we'd met. He'd known about Victoria before me. He'd seen her at that event, serving her and her wealthy friends, and he'd wanted that life. I thought about our relationship with new eyes. The way he'd always been so conscious of status. The way he'd pushed me to quit my job so he could focus on networking. The way he'd suddenly left right after I lost my job, when I became a liability instead of an asset. He hadn't left me because I was poor. He'd left me because I'd stopped being useful in his climb toward the life he really wanted. I was never the love of his life. I was a placeholder, a practice run. I closed my laptop and sat there in the dark, processing this new information. I should have felt devastated. Instead, I felt something else, something clearer. Relief, because it meant none of it had been my fault. I hadn't failed him. I hadn't dragged him down. He'd been using me from the start, and when a better opportunity came along, he jumped. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to that wedding to prove anything to David. He didn't deserve my energy, my thoughts, or my presence. But I was going for myself, to close that chapter, to look him in the eye and feel nothing. And maybe, just maybe, to let him see what he'd lost when he'd been too busy social climbing to notice what was right in front of him. The next morning, I called Mr. Whitmore. "I need some advice," I said. "Legal advice." "Of course. What can I help you with?" "My ex-husband doesn't know I'm pregnant. I want to make sure he has no legal claim to the babies. What do I need to do?" There was a pause. "That's a complicated question. Legally, if he's the biological father, he has certain parental rights regardless of whether he knows about the children. However, you're under no obligation to inform him. And if he's not on the birth certificates, establishing paternity would require DNA testing, which he would have to pursue. So I don't have to tell him?" "You don't have to tell him. But Sarah, I should advise you that secrets like this have a way of coming out. You should think carefully about the long-term implications." "I have thought about it. He abandoned me. He doesn't get to be a father now just because it's convenient." "I understand. And I'll support whatever decision you make. If you'd like, I can draft some documentation that would make your position clear in case he ever tries to claim parental rights." It won't prevent him from trying, but it would establish a timeline of abandonment that would work in your favor. Yes, please do that. After we hung up, I felt lighter, more in control. I spent the rest of the morning doing something I should have done weeks ago. I started planning for my actual future. Not the wedding, not David, my future with 3 babies. I made lists, ridiculous, detailed, obsessive lists. Baby furniture I needed, clothes in multiple sizes because I had no idea how big they'd be. Bottles, diapers, wipes, the special preemie formula Dr. Morrison had recommended in case they couldn't breastfeed. A stroller that could hold 3 infants. Car seats. A bigger car to put the car seats in. The numbers were staggering. Even with the inheritance, even with careful budgeting, raising triplets was going to be expensive. But it was real. It was concrete. It was something I could plan for, control, manage. Unlike David's wedding, which was just a ghost I was chasing. Angela arrived that afternoon and immediately noticed the change in me. "Your blood pressure is down," she said, surprised. 128/82. "What happened?" "I figured some things out," I said. "Good things?" "Clarifying things," she smiled. "Those are sometimes the same thing." The furniture arrived the following week. A proper bed with a good mattress, a dresser, a comfortable chair, 3 cribs that I had them set up in what would be the nursery, the second bedroom in my apartment, barely big enough for 3 cribs side by side, but it would work. I walked into that room after the delivery men left and stood there, staring at the 3 empty cribs, and felt something crack open in my chest. This was real. In a matter of weeks, there would be 3 babies in those cribs. 3 tiny humans depending on me for everything. And I would be alone. Not completely alone. I had Angela, Dr. Morrison, Mr. Whitmore, but no partner. No one to share the 3 a.m. feedings or the panic when one of them wouldn't stop crying. No one to tell me I was doing okay when I felt like I was drowning. I sat down on the floor of the nursery. Angela would kill me if she knew I was sitting on the floor, and let myself cry. Not from sadness, not from fear, just from the weight of it all. When I was done, I picked myself up, washed my face, and went back to my lists. Because lists I could control. Lists had answers. Lists didn't care that I was alone. 2 days later, I got a text from David. "Hey, wanted to check in. Victoria said you never responded to her message. Everything okay?" I'd forgotten I'd blocked Victoria's number. I typed back, "Everything's fine, just busy. See you at the wedding." His response, "Okay, if you say so." BTW, we finalized the seating chart. You're at table 12 with some of Victoria's college friends. Hope that's okay? Table 12. Not with people I knew because I didn't know anyone anymore. Not with David's family because I was no longer family. Table 12 with strangers who would ask polite questions about how I knew the couple and then look uncomfortable when I said I was the ex-wife. "That's fine," I texted back. But it wasn't fine. None of this was fine. I was 31 weeks pregnant now. Dr. Morrison had said if I could make it to 34 weeks, the babies would have an excellent chance of avoiding NICU time entirely. 3 more weeks, 21 days. The wedding was 3 weeks away. The timeline was getting tighter. That night, I had another contraction. Just one, but it was strong enough to wake me up, strong enough to make me gasp and reach for my phone, ready to call Dr. Morrison's emergency line. Then it passed. And there wasn't another one. False alarm. Braxton Hicks. My body practicing for the real thing. But I lay awake for the rest of the night, one hand on my belly, silently begging the babies to stay put just a little longer. 3 more weeks, I whispered to them. Just give me 3 more weeks. When Angela came the next morning, she took one look at me and frowned. "You didn't sleep." "Contraction last night. Just one." Her frown deepened. "We need to call Dr. Morrison." It was just Braxton Hicks. It stopped. "Sarah." Her voice was firm. "This is not the time to take chances." She called Dr. Morrison from my apartment, and within 2 hours, I was back in the doctor's office, lying on an examination table while Dr. Morrison did another ultrasound and cervical check. The silence while she examined me was excruciating. "Okay," she said finally, rolling back on her stool. "The babies are fine. Still strong heartbeats, good movement. But your cervix is now at 1.9 centimeters and funneling." "What does that mean?" "It means your cervix is preparing to open. You're showing early signs of preterm labor." My heart stopped. "Are they coming now?" "Not right now, but soon. Possibly very soon." She met my eyes, her expression serious. "Sarah, I'm putting you on strict bed rest. No more getting up except for the bathroom. I'm also starting you on medication to slow labor if it begins. And I want you on hospital bed rest starting next week." Hospital bed rest? The words felt unreal. "For how long?" "Until you deliver. Or until we hit 34 weeks, whichever comes first." "But that's 3 weeks." "Yes. 3 weeks in the hospital where we can monitor you constantly and intervene immediately if labor starts." I thought about the wedding, the Rolls Royce I'd been planning to rent, the dress I'd ordered online, and the whole fantasy I'd been building about walking in there and showing David what he'd lost. "I have somewhere I need to be in 3 weeks," I said quietly. Dr. Morrison looked at me for a long moment. "Sarah, I need you to hear me. If you go into labor before 34 weeks, your babies will be in the NICU. They'll be on ventilators, feeding tubes, monitored every second. They might be there for weeks. They might have complications. Every day we can keep them inside is a day we avoid that." "I understand." "Do you? Because I need to know that you're prioritizing these babies over everything else, including whatever event you think you need to attend." Her words stung because they were true. "It's my ex-husband's wedding," I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. "He left me. He humiliated me. And I wanted to show him that I'm okay, that he didn't break me." Dr. Morrison's expression softened slightly. "And you think going to his wedding will do that?" "I don't know anymore." "Sarah." She reached over and touched my arm. "You don't need to prove anything to him. You're here, fighting for your babies, building a life. That's more strength than he'll ever have. Let him go. Focus on what matters." I nodded, but I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight. "I'll see you Monday for admission to the hospital," Dr. Morrison said. "Pack comfortable clothes and anything you need for entertainment. It's going to be a long 3 weeks." Angela drove me home. She'd come with me to the appointment and helped me into my apartment. "You did the right thing," she said. "I know it doesn't feel like it, but you did." After she left, I sat on my bed and stared at the 3 cribs in the next room. 3 more weeks until they were a wedding. 3 more weeks until 34 weeks gestation. The universe was making me choose. I picked up my phone and started to type a message to David. I won't be able to make it to the wedding after all. But I couldn't send it. My finger hovered over the button, trembling. Sending that message felt like admitting defeat, like letting him win, like proving that he was right to leave me, right to move on, right to think I was nothing. But not sending it, going to that wedding, risking my babies for my pride. What kind of mother did that make me? I deleted the message without sending it. I would decide later, after the weekend, after I had time to think. But that night, at 2 a.m, I woke up to cramping. Real cramping this time, coming in waves every 15 minutes. I called Dr. Morrison's emergency line with shaking hands. "Come to the hospital now," she said immediately. "Don't wait. Come now." The ambulance ride was a blur. The emergency room was bright and cold. They got me into a labor and delivery room and started IV fluids and medication to stop the contractions. Dr. Morrison arrived still in her pajamas, her hair loose around her shoulders. "You're at 3 centimeters dilated," she said after examining me. "We've got you on magnesium sulfate to stop labor, and we've given you steroid shots to help the baby's lungs develop in case we can't stop it." "Are they coming?" I whispered. "We're doing everything we can to prevent it. But Sarah, you need to prepare yourself. If we can't stop this labor, you're going to deliver tonight." I was 31 weeks and 4 days pregnant. The babies needed 3 more weeks minimum. "Please," I said to Dr. Morrison, to the nurses, to anyone who would listen, please don't let them come yet. The next 6 hours were the longest of my life. The contractions slowed but didn't stop. The magnesium made me feel sick and shaky. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, could only lie there attached to monitors that beeped every time one of the babies moved. Angela showed up at some point. How she knew, I don't know, and sat beside my bed, holding my hand. You're going to be okay, she kept saying. All 4 of you are going to be okay. By morning, the contractions had stopped. Dr. Morrison examined me again. Still 3 centimeters, but you've stopped progressing. That's good news. Can I go home? Absolutely not. You're staying here on bed rest until we hit 34 weeks, or until you deliver, whichever comes first. I did the math in my head. 2.5 weeks in the hospital. The wedding was in 2.5 weeks. There's an event, I started to say, but Dr. Morrison cut me off. No. Whatever it is, no. You are not leaving this hospital bed for anything except medical emergency. Do you understand? I understood. The choice had been made for me. I was not going to David's wedding. After Dr. Morrison left, I lay in my hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how I felt. Disappointed, relieved, angry, sad. All of it at once, and none of it quite enough. I picked up my phone and finally sent the message I should have sent weeks ago. David, I won't be able to attend the wedding. Medical emergency. Wish you both well. His response came within minutes. Oh no. Is everything okay? Do you need anything? The concern in his message felt hollow, performative. Or maybe I was just too tired to believe it was real. I'm fine. Enjoy your day. I turned off my phone after that and closed my eyes. In 2.5 weeks, David would marry Victoria. They would have their perfect wedding at the perfect venue with their perfect lives. And I would be in a hospital bed, fighting to keep my babies safe for just a few more days. It should have felt like losing. But as I lay there, feeling the babies move inside me, strong and steady despite everything, I realized something. I hadn't lost anything. I'd chosen. And for the first time since David had walked out, I'd chosen right. Hospital bed rest was its own special circle of hell. I'd been here for 4 days, and I'd already memorized every crack in the ceiling, every sound the monitors made, the exact schedule of the nursing shifts. My room had a window that looked out onto the parking lot, and I spent hours watching people come and go, living their normal lives while I was suspended in this strange limbo. The babies were active, constantly moving, which the nurses said was a good sign. They monitored me 3 times a day, heartbeats, positions, my vitals. The magnesium had been stopped after the first 24 hours, but I was still on modified medications to prevent labor from restarting. Every morning, Dr. Morrison came in to check my cervix. Every morning, I held my breath, waiting for the results. Still at 3 centimeters, she said on day 4. No progression. That's exactly what we want to see. How much longer? I asked. Ideally, 10 more days to hit 34 weeks. After that, if you go into labor, we won't stop it. 10 more days. The wedding was in 10 days. I'd stopped thinking about it, or at least I tried to. But it lingered in the back of my mind like a bruise I couldn't stop pressing on. Angela visited every afternoon. She'd bring magazines, crossword puzzles, sometimes just sit with me and talk about nothing. She told me about her grandchildren, about her garden, about the recipes she was planning to make for Thanksgiving. You're going to be out of here before Thanksgiving, she promised, with 3 beautiful babies. If they stay inside that long, they will. I can feel it. I wanted to believe her. On day 5, a nurse I didn't recognize came in during the evening shift. She was young, probably fresh out of nursing school, with bright pink scrubs and a nervous energy. Hi, I'm Jessica, she said. I'll be your nurse tonight. How are you feeling? Bored, anxious, ready to not be pregnant anymore. She laughed. I bet. Triplets, right? That's amazing. That's one word for it. She checked my vitals, examined the monitor strips from the babies, made notes in her tablet, professional, efficient. Then she said something that changed everything. Hey, weird question, but are you Sarah Mitchell? Or I guess, Sarah Chen. I went still. Why? There's a woman in the waiting room who says she knows you. She's been here for like 2 hours. The front desk told her she couldn't visit because you're high risk and on limited visitors. But she's pretty insistent. My first thought was David's mother. She'd somehow found out and come to gloat or lecture me, or worse. Who is she? I asked carefully. She didn't give her name, just said she's an old friend and it's important. Should I tell her to leave? Can you describe her? Older woman, maybe 60s. Well-dressed, like really well-dressed. Fancy coat. She seems nice, but also like she's not used to taking no for an answer. That didn't sound like Patricia. David's mother was younger, and well-dressed was generous. I'll see her, I said, curiosity winning out over caution, but just for a few minutes. Jessica left, and I used the time to sit up slightly, smooth my hospital gown, try to look less like someone who'd been in bed for 5 days straight. The woman who walked into my room 3 minutes later was not someone I recognized. She was tall, elegant, with silver hair cut in a sharp bob and clothes that screamed money, the kind of quiet, expensive money that doesn't need to announce itself. She carried a leather handbag that probably cost more than my car used to. "Sarah," she said, and her voice was warm but commanding. "Thank you for seeing me." "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" She smiled. "No, but I knew Margaret." My breath caught. "Aunt Margaret?" "Margaret Chen was my closest friend for 40 years. I'm Catherine Hartley." The room tilted slightly. Catherine Hartley, Victoria's mother. "I see you recognize the name," Catherine said, watching my face. "May I sit?" I nodded, too shocked to speak. She pulled the visitor's chair closer to my bed and sat down with perfect posture, setting her handbag on the floor. "First," she said, "I want to apologize for ambushing you like this. I know you're on bed rest, and I wouldn't have come if it wasn't important. How did you even know I was here? Margaret's lawyer, Charles Whitmore, is my attorney as well. We go back many years. He mentioned, in confidence, which I hope you'll forgive, that you were expecting and had some complications. When I realized who you were, I knew I had to come." "Who I am?" "David Chen's ex-wife, the woman he left to marry my daughter." I stared at her, trying to read her expression. She didn't look angry or judgmental. She looked sad. "Why are you here?" I asked. Catherine was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "Margaret and I had tea once a month for 40 years, she said finally. "Even after she went into assisted living, I visited her every week. She told me about you, about her great-nephew's wife, who she'd met once, but never forgot. I barely spoke to her at my wedding. She said you were the only person who asked her about her life instead of complimenting the venue or the flowers. You asked about her garden, apparently, and her late husband. She said you had substance." My throat felt tight. I didn't know. Margaret was a remarkable woman. She saw people very clearly. When she got sick last year, she made sure her affairs were in order. She told me she was leaving everything to you, and she told me why." Catherine paused. "She said David was a social climber who would ruin you, and that you deserved a chance to build a real life without him." I couldn't speak. "She was right about him," Catherine continued, "about what he is, what he wants. Then why are you letting your daughter marry him?" Catherine's expression tightened, the first crack in her composed exterior. "Because my daughter is 28 years old and makes her own choices, even when they're terrible ones. You don't approve. I don't. But Victoria is determined. She's always been determined. When she wants something, she doesn't let go. And she wants David." "Why?" The question burst out before I could stop it. "Why him?" Catherine smiled sadly. "Because he tells her she's perfect. Because he fits into the life she thinks she's supposed to have. Because she's young and she thinks that marrying the right kind of man will make her the right kind of person. He's using her. I know, but she doesn't believe me. She thinks I'm being overprotective or snobbish." Catherine leaned forward slightly. "Sarah, I'm not here to stop the wedding. I'm here because Margaret would have wanted me to tell you something." "What?" "The wedding is in 10 days. Victoria's been planning it for 6 months, and she's spent an obscene amount of money on it. My husband and I are paying for most of it, which means we have certain Privileges. I didn't understand what she was getting at. I control the guest list, Catherine said. I control the seating arrangements. I control the vendor contracts. And I want you to come to that wedding. I actually laughed. A sharp, disbelieving sound. You want me to come? To watch your daughter marry my ex-husband? No. I want you to come because it's what Margaret would have wanted. She wanted you to see that you'd moved past him, that you'd built something real while he was chasing smoke. Catherine's eyes dropped to my belly. I understand you're having triplets. How did you? Charles mentioned it. Congratulations. That's a blessing. It's also why I can't come. I'm on bed rest. I can't leave this hospital until I deliver or hit 34 weeks. When is 34 weeks? 10 days. The day of the wedding. Catherine's expression shifted, something calculating entering her eyes. What if the wedding came to you? What? What if you didn't have to leave the hospital? What if we brought the wedding here? I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. That's insane. Is it? This hospital has a beautiful rooftop garden. It's used for patients who can be moved for brief periods. If your doctor cleared you to be wheeled up there in a wheelchair for an hour, you could see the ceremony. You could be there without risking your babies. Why would you do that? Change your daughter's wedding for a stranger? Because you're not a stranger. You're Margaret's heir. And because... Catherine hesitated, then continued. Because I think my daughter needs to see you. She needs to see that the woman her fiancé left wasn't some pathetic failure he had to escape. She needs to see that you're strong and real, and that the life she's building is built on a foundation of lies. You want me to sabotage her wedding? No, I want you to attend her wedding. There's a difference. Catherine reached into her handbag and pulled out a business card. This is my personal number. Think about it. Talk to your doctor. If it's possible, if it's safe, I'll make the arrangements. And if Victoria finds out you invited me, she won't, not until you arrive. And by then, it will be too late for her to make a scene without looking petty. Catherine stood up. I know this is overwhelming. I know you have no reason to trust me. But Margaret trusted me with everything that mattered to her. And you mattered to her. She moved toward the door, then paused and turned back. One more thing. David doesn't know you're pregnant, does he? No? Good. Keep it that way until the wedding. If you decide to come. Her smile was sharp now, almost predatory. Trust me. The surprise will be worth it. After she left, I sat in my hospital bed, staring at the business card in my hand, trying to process what had just happened. Victoria's mother wanted me at the wedding. Not just wanted, was willing to move the ceremony to make it happen. It was insane. It was manipulative. It was probably a terrible idea. But God, I wanted to do it. Not for David, not even for Victoria, for myself. To prove that I could show up, that I could face them both, that I could stand in the wreckage of my old life and feel nothing but relief that I'd escaped. And for Margaret, who'd seen something in me worth saving. I pressed the call button for the nurse. Jessica appeared a minute later. Everything okay? I need to talk to Dr. Morrison. Is she still in the hospital? I think so. Want me to page her? Yes, please. Dr. Morrison arrived 20 minutes later, still in her scrubs from a delivery. What's wrong? She asked immediately, scanning the monitors. Nothing's wrong, but I need to ask you something. Hypothetically. She raised an eyebrow. Hypothetically. If I make it to 34 weeks, if I'm stable, could I leave my room for an hour? In a wheelchair? To go to the rooftop garden? Dr. Morrison crossed her arms. This is about that wedding, isn't it? They want to move it here, to the hospital, so I can attend without leaving the building. Who's they? It's complicated, but it would be safe. I'd be in a wheelchair. Nurses could be there. It would only be for the ceremony, an hour maximum. Dr. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. If, and this is a very big if, you make it to 34 weeks without going into labor, and if you're stable that day, and if I can have medical staff on standby, then yes, theoretically, you could be moved to the rooftop garden for a brief period. Really? Really? But Sarah, you need to understand. If you go into labor at 34 weeks, we won't stop it. The babies will be born that day or shortly after. You might not have time for a wedding. I understand. Do you? Because I need you to have your priorities straight. My priority is my babies, always. But if there's a way to do both, to keep them safe and also close this chapter of my life, I want to try. Dr. Morrison studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, let's see if you make it to 34 weeks first. Then we'll talk about logistics. After she left, I picked up my phone and stared at Catherine Hartley's business card. This was crazy. This was probably a mistake. But for the first time since I'd been admitted to the hospital, I felt something other than fear and boredom. I felt anticipation. I texted Catherine's number. I talked to my doctor. If I'm stable at 34 weeks, I can attend for 1 hour in a wheelchair with medical supervision. Is that workable? Her response came immediately. Absolutely. I'll coordinate everything with the hospital. Thank you, Sarah. Margaret would be so proud. I put my phone down and looked at the 3 monitors tracking my baby's heartbeats. You hear that? I whispered to them. 10 more days. We just need 10 more days. Then we're going to show them all exactly what we're made of. The babies kicked in response, all 3 of them moving at once, and I took it as agreement. 10 days. I could do 10 days. The next morning, Angela arrived for her visit and immediately knew something had changed. You look different, she said, studying my face. Different how? Lighter, less scared. I told her about Catherine's visit, about the plan to move the wedding to the hospital. Angela listened without interrupting, her expression neutral. When I finished, she said, You sure about this? No, but I want to do it anyway. Why? Because I need to see them. I need to see David marry her and feel nothing. I need to prove to myself that I'm really over it. And what if you don't feel nothing? What if it hurts? I thought about that. Then it hurts. But at least I'll know. At least I'll have faced it instead of hiding. Angela nodded slowly. Okay, then let's make sure you get to 34 weeks. What do you need from me? Help me not lose my mind for the next 10 days. She smiled. I can do that. For the next week, Angela came every afternoon and helped me prepare. Not for the wedding. That felt too superstitious. Like planning for it might jinx my chances of getting there. But for the babies. She brought me books about caring for multiples. We made lists of supplies I still needed. She helped me interview doulas online, women who specialized in supporting single mothers of multiples. You're not going to be alone, Angela kept saying. You're going to have help. I can't afford a full-time nanny. You don't need full-time. You need strategic help. A night nurse for the first few months so you can sleep. A cleaning service so you're not drowning in laundry. Grocery delivery so you're not dragging 3 infants to the store. She made it sound manageable, almost easy. I wanted to believe her. Dr. Morrison came every morning, checking my cervix, monitoring the babies. Every day, I held my breath. Still at 3 centimeters, she'd say. No change. Perfect. The wedding was in 5 days. Then 4 days. Then 3. On day 3, I started having contractions again. Mild ones, irregular, but enough to make Dr. Morrison increase my monitoring. It's normal to have some contractions as you get closer to 34 weeks, she said. Your body is preparing. But if they become regular or intense, we need to know immediately. That night, I couldn't sleep. The contractions kept coming. Nothing painful, just a tightening of my belly every 30 or 40 minutes. Enough to remind me that my body was done being pregnant, that it was ready to evict these babies, whether I was ready or not. I watched the clock on the wall, counting down the hours until 34 weeks. 48 hours. I just needed 48 more hours. The babies were quiet that night, less active than usual, and that scared me more than the contractions. I kept pressing the call button, having the nurses check the monitors, making sure they were okay. They're fine, Jessica assured me around 2 a.m. Sometimes they sleep. It's normal. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The next morning, 2 days before the wedding, Dr. Morrison did her examination, and her face did something I'd never seen before. She frowned. What? I asked immediately. What's wrong? You're at 4 centimeters. But yesterday I was at 3. I know. You've progressed a centimeter overnight? She pulled off her gloves. Sarah, I think you're going into labor. No, not yet. I need 2 more days. I understand, but your body has other plans. She sat down on the edge of the bed. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to monitor you closely today. If the contractions become regular and your cervix continues to dilate, we'll prepare for delivery. You're 33 weeks and 5 days. That's viable. The babies will be fine. But not at the wedding. Dr. Morrison's expression softened. No, probably not at the wedding. I felt something break inside me. Not devastation. Something quieter. Resignation. Okay, I whispered. Okay. She squeezed my hand. I'm sorry, Sarah. I know you wanted this. After she left, I lay in bed and cried. Not loud, dramatic sobs. Just quiet tears sliding down my face while I stared at the ceiling. I'd been so close. 2 more days? 48 hours. That's all I'd needed. Around noon, Angela arrived and found me red-eyed and silent. Dr. Morrison told me, she said, sitting down beside the bed. I'm sorry, honey. It's fine. The babies are what matters. The babies are what matters. But you're allowed to be disappointed too. I wanted to see them, I admitted. I wanted to walk in there, roll in there, and show them I'd survived, that I'd won. You did win. You have 3 healthy babies about to be born. He has a fake marriage to a woman whose mother doesn't even approve. You won, Sarah. Whether you show up at that wedding or not, you won. I wanted to believe her. That evening, the contractions got stronger, more regular, every 15 minutes, then every 12. Dr. Morrison came back around 8 p.m. and examined me again. 5 centimeters. We're heading toward active labor. She looked at me seriously. I'm calling the team. We're going to prepare for delivery, possibly tonight. What about waiting until 34 weeks? That's tomorrow. If we can get you there, we will. But if labor progresses, we can't stop it. Not safely. They moved me to a delivery room around 9 p.m. The contractions were coming every 10 minutes now, strong enough that I had to breathe through them. Angela stayed with me, holding my hand, talking me through each one. You're doing great, she kept saying. You're so strong. But I didn't feel strong. I felt terrified. Midnight came and went. I was 34 weeks. The babies were safe now, Dr. Morrison had said. If they were born today, they probably wouldn't need the NICU. They'd be small, but healthy. The wedding was tomorrow. Today, technically. Saturday morning, 11 a.m. I would be in this delivery room having contractions, possibly delivering 3 babies. Not at a wedding, not showing David anything, just being a mother. At 2 a.m., Dr. Morrison checked me again. Still at 5 centimeters, you've stalled. What does that mean? It means your labor has slowed down. Sometimes that happens. Your body might be taking a break. She looked at the monitors. The babies look good. Contractions are spacing out. If this pattern continues, you might not deliver today after all. Really? Really? Let's see what happens over the next few hours. By 6 a.m., my contractions had slowed to every 20 minutes. Uncomfortable, but manageable. Dr. Morrison examined me at 7. Still 5 centimeters. Your labor has stalled completely. She looked at me with something that might have been amusement. It appears your babies have decided they're not ready to be born just yet. So, the wedding? Let's check you again at 9. If you're still stable, and if the contractions stay spaced out, then yes. You can go to the wedding, 1 hour, in a wheelchair, with a nurse and me standing by. I started crying again, but this time from relief. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me yet. We still have to get you there. I texted Catherine at 7:30 a.m. I'm stable. Still on for 11? Her response was immediate. Everything is ready. See you soon. At 9 a.m., Dr. Morrison examined me one final time. 5 centimeters, no change. Contractions every 25 minutes. She stepped back. Okay, you can go. But the second, and I mean the second, anything changes, you come back to this room. Understood? Understood. Jessica brought in a wheelchair and helped me into it. I was wearing a hospital gown and a robe Angela had brought me, my hair brushed for the first time in days. I looked ridiculous. I felt powerful. Ready? Jessica asked. I put my hands on my enormous belly and took a deep breath. Ready. The elevator ride to the rooftop felt like ascending to another world. Jessica wheeled me in, with Angela walking beside us and Dr. Morrison following close behind. We were a strange procession. A pregnant woman in a wheelchair, her medical team heading to a wedding that the bride didn't know I was attending. Nervous? Angela asked, her hand on my shoulder. Terrified, I admitted. Good. That means you're still human. The elevator doors opened onto the rooftop garden, and I forgot to breathe. Catherine Hartley had transformed the space into something out of a magazine. White flowers everywhere, roses, peonies, hydrangeas, arranged in elegant displays along a white carpeted aisle. Chairs set up in neat rows, already filling with guests in expensive clothes and practiced smiles. A string quartet playing softly in the corner, and at the front, under an arch woven with more white flowers, stood David. I hadn't seen him in 8 months. He looked different, better groomed, better dressed, his hair styled professionally, wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than our rent used to. He was talking to his best man, laughing at something, completely at ease. He looked like he belonged here, like he'd always been meant for this life and I'd just been a detour on his way to it. You okay? Jessica whispered. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Catherine appeared from somewhere, gliding across the rooftop in a champagne-colored dress that probably cost 5 figures. She looked elegant, controlled, every inch the mother of the bride. Sarah, she said warmly, leaning down to take my hand, I'm so glad you made it. How are you feeling? Like I might deliver any second, I said honestly. Well, let's hope you can hold out for 45 minutes. She smiled, but there was something sharp in her eyes. I've saved you a spot in the back row, off to the side. You'll be able to see everything without being obvious. Most of the guests won't even notice you're here. And Victoria? Victoria is currently in the bridal suite having a minor crisis about her veil. She won't see the guests until she walks down the aisle. Catherine paused. I should warn you, I told David you were invited. My stomach dropped. You what? This morning, about an hour ago, I thought it was only fair to give him some warning. What did he say? Catherine's smile turned razor sharp. He asked me not to tell Victoria. He said it would upset her unnecessarily. Then he asked if you were bringing a date. I almost laughed. What did you tell him? I told him you were coming alone, but bringing a surprise. Before I could ask what that meant, Catherine squeezed my hand and moved away, returning to her role as mother of the bride, hostess, conductor of this elaborate performance. Jessica wheeled me to the designated spot, tucked slightly behind a pillar, with a clear view of the aisle and the altar, but partially hidden from the main seating area. It was perfect. I could see everything without being seen. Dr. Morrison positioned herself nearby, her medical bag at her feet, her attention split between me and the ceremony setup. Any contractions? She asked quietly. One in the elevator. Nothing since. Good. Let me know the second that changes. The seats continued to fill. I recognized some faces from my marriage to David. His cousins, his college friends, people who'd been at our wedding and then vanished when we divorced. They didn't see me. They were too busy air-kissing and admiring the venue and taking photos for their social media. David's mother arrived, wearing a dress that was trying too hard and jewelry that sparkled in the sunlight. She took her seat in the front row, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief even though nothing had happened yet. Then Victoria's father appeared, Richard Hartley, tall and distinguished in a tailored tuxedo, looking like old money personified. He shook hands with guests, smiled at the right moments, but there was something distant in his expression, like he was playing a role he'd perfected over decades. The string quartet shifted into a different melody, and the guests quieted, turning toward the back of the rooftop. The wedding party began their processional. Bridesmaids in blush pink dresses, each carrying a small bouquet. Groomsmen in matching tuxedos. David's best man, looking nervous. And then David himself, escorted by his mother, walking to his position at the altar. He looked confident, happy, like a man who'd finally gotten everything he wanted. As he reached the front, his eyes scanned the crowd and found me. The change in his expression was instantaneous. His practiced smile faltered. His eyes widened. For just a second, he looked like he might bolt. Then he recovered, forcing the smile back into place, but his eyes kept darting back to where I sat, trying to understand what I was doing here, why I looked the way I did, because I was obviously, enormously, undeniably pregnant. 8 months pregnant with triplets meant I looked like I'd swallowed a planet. There was no hiding it, no mistaking it. And David was putting together the timeline in real time, his face cycling through shock, confusion, and something that might have been panic. I met his eyes and smiled. Just a small smile. Calm. Unbothered. He looked away first. The music changed again, swelling into the bridal march. Everyone stood. And Victoria appeared. She was stunning. I could admit that objectively. Her dress was a work of art. Layers of silk and lace, a cathedral train, a veil that caught the breeze. Her makeup was flawless. Her hair was perfect. She looked like every girl's fantasy of what a bride should be. She walked down the aisle on her father's arm, smiling at the guests, soaking in their admiration, and she had no idea I was there. When she reached the altar, David took her hand, but his eyes flickered toward me again. Victoria noticed, following his gaze, scanning the crowd to see what had captured his attention. She didn't see me. The pillar and the angle hid me just enough. But she saw that something was wrong. I could see it in the way her smile tightened, the way her grip on David's hand became firmer. The officiant began speaking, his voice carrying across the rooftop about love and commitment and the joining of two lives. I only half listened. I was watching David, watching the way he couldn't quite focus on Victoria, the way his eyes kept trying to find me again. If anyone has any reason why these two should not be married, speak now, or forever hold your peace, the officiant said. The traditional silence followed. No one ever actually spoke up during this part. It was ceremonial, theatrical. But David looked at me during that silence, a question in his eyes that I couldn't quite read. I said nothing, did nothing. Just sat there with my hands on my belly, feeling the babies move. This wasn't my moment to speak. The ceremony continued. The vows were traditional, impersonal. David and Victoria repeated words that thousands of couples had said before them, promising things they might or might not keep. When they got to the rings, David's hands were shaking slightly. Victoria noticed. I could see her glance down, see the small furrow in her brow. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. The kiss was perfect for photographs. Romantic, tender, lasting just the right amount of time. The guests applauded. Victoria and David turned to face everyone, as husband and wife, their smiles bright, their hands clasped. And that's when Victoria saw me. Her smile didn't falter. She was too well trained for that. But her eyes locked onto mine, and I watched her process what she was seeing. The wheelchair, the hospital gown under the robe, the unmistakable shape of my body. She leaned closer to David, whispered something. He whispered back. Her smile became tighter. They walked back down the aisle together, Victoria's hand gripping David's arm, both of them nodding at guests, accepting. Congratulations. As they passed my section, Victoria's eyes met mine again. I smiled at her, not smug, not cruel, just present. She looked away and kept walking. The moment they were past, I felt a contraction, stronger than the ones before. I pressed my hand against my belly and breathed through it. That's our cue, Dr. Morrison said immediately. We're going back downstairs. Wait, the reception is not worth risking your babies. You came, you saw, you made your point. Now we go back. She was right. I knew she was right. Jessica started wheeling me toward the elevator, Angela walking alongside, Dr. Morrison bringing up the rear. But before we could reach the doors, someone called out, "Sarah, wait." I turned, as much as I could in a wheelchair, and saw Catherine hurrying toward us, her champagne dress flowing. She reached us, slightly breathless. "You're leaving already?" "Medical necessity," Dr. Morrison said firmly. Of course, of course." Catherine placed a hand on my shoulder. "Thank you for coming. Margaret would have been so proud of you." "I didn't do anything," I said. "You showed up. You faced them. You proved you'd moved on." Catherine smiled. "And judging by Victoria's face, when she saw you, I'd say the message was received." "What message?" "That she married a man who leaves pregnant women. That her perfect wedding was attended by his abandoned ex-wife. That the life she thinks she's building has a foundation made of other people's pain." Catherine's voice was gentle but firm. She needed to see that, even if she doesn't understand it yet. Another contraction hit, stronger this time. I gasped, gripping the wheelchair armrests. "We need to go," Dr. Morrison said. "Now." Catherine stepped back. "Go. Take care of those babies. And Sarah, when they're born, I'd like to meet them, if you'll allow it." I nodded, unable to speak through the contraction. The elevator ride down felt eternal. The contractions were coming every 5 minutes now, strong and insistent. "Talk to me," Dr. Morrison said. "Pain level?" 7, I managed. "Maybe 8. "Okay, we're almost there." They wheeled me straight into the delivery room I'd left 2 hours ago. Within minutes, I was back in bed, monitors attached, IV started. Dr. Morrison examined me. 7 centimeters. You're in active labor now." "How long?" I asked. "Could be hours, could be less. With triplets, it's unpredictable." She met my eyes. "Are you ready?" Was I ready? Ready to become a mother to 3 babies? Ready to do this alone? Ready for my life to change in ways I couldn't even imagine? "No," I said honestly. "But I don't think ready matters anymore." Angela laughed, squeezing my hand. "That's the spirit." The next 3 hours were a blur of contractions, breathing exercises, ice chips, and Angela's voice telling me I was doing great even when I felt like I was being torn apart. Dr. Morrison checked me regularly, tracking my progress. 8 centimeters. 9 centimeters. Almost there. And then finally, 10 centimeters. It's time. They wheeled me into the operating room, standard procedure for triplets, Dr. Morrison explained, in case complications arose, and they needed to do an emergency C-section. The room was full of people. Nurses, a pediatrician, a neonatal team standing by for each baby. Dr. Morrison, at the foot of the bed, calm and focused. "Okay, Sarah," she said. "On the next contraction, I need you to push." I pushed, and pushed, and pushed. "I can see the head," Dr. Morrison called out. "One more push." I pushed with everything I had, and suddenly there was a release and noise. A baby crying, loud and angry and alive. "It's a boy," someone announced. They held him up for a second, tiny, red, screaming, before whisking him away to the warming table. "No time to rest," Dr. Morrison said. "Baby 2 is coming. Push." The second baby came faster, sliding out with 2 strong pushes. Another boy. More crying, another tiny body being carried away to be checked and cleaned and counted. Fingers, toes, heartbeats. "One more," Dr. Morrison said. "You're doing amazing. One more." The third baby was stubborn. The contractions were weaker now, my body exhausted. "Come on, Sarah," Angela said from beside my head. "One more. You can do this." I pushed with everything I had left. Nothing. I pushed again. "That's it," Dr. Morrison said. "Here comes the head." One final push, and the third baby was born. "A girl," someone called out. The room erupted in activity. 3 warming tables, 3 crying babies, nurses checking vitals and calling out numbers. I lay there, utterly spent, tears streaming down my face. "Are they okay?" I managed to ask. Dr. Morrison came to my side, pulling down her mask, smiling. "They're perfect. All 3, small. Baby A is 4 pounds 2 ounces, baby B is 4 pounds even, Baby C is 3 pounds, 12 ounces, but their lungs are strong and they're breathing on their own. No NICU needed. I started sobbing. Not from pain, not from exhaustion, from relief, from joy, from the overwhelming reality that I'd done it. They brought the babies to me, one at a time, carefully placed on my chest for skin-to-skin contact. The first boy, baby A, had a full head of dark hair and the angriest expression I'd ever seen on a newborn. The second boy, baby B, was calmer, his eyes open, looking around with what seemed like curiosity. The girl, baby C, was the smallest, but she had a fierce grip when she wrapped her tiny hand around my finger. "They need names," Angela said softly. I'd thought about this during the long weeks of bed rest, making lists, crossing things out, changing my mind a dozen times. But now, looking at them, the names felt obvious. "Lucas," I said, looking at baby A, "for my father." "Oliver," I said, looking at baby B, "because it means peace." "Margaret," I said, looking at baby C, "for the woman who gave us a chance." Angela wiped her eyes. She would have loved that. They took the babies away. After a few minutes, they needed to be fully examined, measured, footprinted, all the standard newborn procedures. I lay in the bed, staring at the ceiling, my body empty and aching and more exhausted than I'd ever been. I'd missed the reception. I'd never see David and Victoria's first dance, never hear the speeches, never watch them cut the cake. But I'd done something more important. I'd become a mother. Several hours later, after I'd been moved to a recovery room and the babies had been brought back to me, sleeping in their clear bassinets beside my bed, there was a soft knock on the door. Catherine Hartley entered, still in her champagne dress, carrying 3 small gift bags. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said quietly. "How did you even know I'd delivered?" "I called the hospital. They wouldn't give me details, but they confirmed you were no longer in labor and delivery." She came closer, looking at the 3 sleeping babies. "Oh, Sarah, they're beautiful." "Thank you." She set the gift bags on the side table. "These are from me. Nothing extravagant, just some things I thought you might need. And a letter from Margaret that Charles Whitmore asked me to give you when the time was right." "A letter?" "She wrote it before she died. For you to read after the babies were born." Catherine smiled. She was quite adamant about the timing. She moved toward the door, then paused. The wedding reception was lovely, very elegant, very expensive, and completely hollow. "I'm sorry," I said, though I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for. "Don't be. Victoria married exactly what she thought she wanted. She'll figure out what that means eventually." Catherine's expression softened. "But you have something real, something that matters. Margaret knew that about you." After she left, I opened one of the gift bags. Inside was a beautiful baby blanket, hand-knitted in soft cream wool. The other 2 bags had matching blankets, and at the bottom of one bag was an envelope with my name on it in shaky handwriting. I opened it carefully and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "My dear Sarah," it began, "if you're reading this, you've met your children, and I've gone to whatever comes next. I hope you'll forgive an old woman's presumption in writing this letter. I only met you once, but I knew immediately that you had something rare, genuine strength. Not the loud, performative kind that people use to hide their weakness. The quiet kind, the kind that endures. My great-nephew was a fool to leave you, but his foolishness was your liberation. The money I've left you is meant to give you freedom, to choose the life you want, to raise your children without desperation, to become whoever you are meant to be without someone else's expectations weighing you down. But money is only a tool. What you build with it, how you use it, what you teach your children about worth and value and love, that's what matters. I hope you find joy. I hope you find peace. I hope you look at your children and see possibility instead of burden. And I hope someday you forget the name of the man who wasn't worthy of you. You are always going to be fine, Sarah. I just wanted to make sure you knew it. With great affection, Margaret Chen." I read it 3 times. tears streaming down my face. Then I folded it carefully and put it in the drawer of my bedside table, next to the hospital's welcome packet and the forms I'd need to fill out for birth certificates. I looked at my 3 babies, sleeping peacefully in their bassinets. Lucas, Oliver, Margaret, my 3 miracles. David was somewhere having his first dance with Victoria, cutting a cake, making toasts. And I was here, exhausted and aching and more complete than I'd ever felt in my life. Angela had been right. I'd already won. The next morning, a nurse brought my phone to me. Angela had taken it when I went into labor. I had 47 text messages and 19 missed calls. Most were from numbers I didn't recognize. A few were from David. I deleted them all without reading them. Then I opened my camera and took a photo of the 3 babies sleeping side by side, Lucas with his angry expression even in sleep, Oliver with his peaceful, curious face, Margaret with her tiny but fierce presence. I looked at the photo for a long time. This was my family now. This was my life. And David Chen, the man I'd once loved, the man who'd abandoned me, the man who'd married someone else while I fought to keep our children safe. He wasn't part of it. He'd never be part of it. I'd made sure of that the moment I chose not to tell him I was pregnant. And looking at my 3 perfect babies, I knew I'd made the right choice. Whatever came next, the sleepless nights, the overwhelming responsibility, the fear and joy and exhaustion of single motherhood, I would face it alone, but not really alone, because I had Lucas, Oliver, and Margaret, and they had me. That was enough. That was everything. 3 weeks after the babies were born, I finally went home. Not to my old cramped apartment, but to the 3-bedroom place I'd found during bed rest. The landlord had held it for me, and Angela had coordinated with a moving company to transfer my belongings while I was in the hospital. I walked into the new apartment carrying Margaret in her car seat, while 2 nurses from the hospital helped bring Lucas and Oliver. The space was filled with afternoon light, and I could see the park across the street through the windows. It felt like a beginning. The first week home was a blur of feeding schedules, diaper changes, and sleep deprivation that made labor look easy by comparison. The babies ate every 3 hours, which meant that by the time I finished feeding all 3, cleaned them up, and got them back to sleep, I had maybe 45 minutes before the cycle started again. Angela had been right about needing help. I'd hired a night nurse, a calm woman named Patricia, who came at 11 p.m. and stayed until 7 a.m., handling all the overnight feedings so I could sleep for more than 90 minutes at a time. It was expensive, but it was also the only reason I didn't completely fall apart. I'd also hired a cleaning service that came twice a week, a grocery delivery subscription, and a meal prep service that dropped off pre-made food every Monday. Margaret's inheritance was making all of this possible, and every time I paid a bill, I thought about her letter. Money is only a tool. What you build with it, that's what matters. I was building a life where I could be present for my children without drowning in logistics. That felt like the right use of her gift. David tried to contact me 17 times in those first 3 weeks. Texts, calls, even an email to my old work address that somehow got forwarded to my personal account. I didn't respond to any of them, but I read them. I couldn't help myself. The first few were cautiously concerned. "Hey, I saw you at the wedding. Are you okay? Can we talk?" Then confused, "Why didn't you tell me you were pregnant? Are they mine?" Then demanding, "Sarah, I have a right to know if I'm a father. You can't just ignore me." Then almost pleading, "Please, just tell me what's going on. I deserve to know." The final message, sent at 3 a.m, 2 weeks after the wedding, was different. I saw the birth announcement in the hospital records. My mom works in admin there, and she told me. 3 babies, born the day of my wedding. I don't know if they're mine or if you moved on, but either way, I hope you're okay. You always deserved better than what I gave you. I'm sorry for how I left things. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me someday. David. I read the message sitting in my rocking chair at 4 a.m., Oliver asleep against my chest after a feeding. The apology felt hollow. Too little, too late. and wrapped in assumptions that absolved him of real accountability. But the strangest part was that I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, not even relief. Just nothing. He was a stranger now. Someone I used to know who'd made choices that led him away from me, and I'd made choices that led me here, to this quiet apartment with 3 sleeping babies and a life he'd never be part of. I deleted the message and blocked his number. Then I put my phone away and focused on Oliver, his tiny, warm weight against me, his perfect, sleeping face. This was my life now. David wasn't part of it. 1 month after bringing the babies home, Catherine Hartley came to visit. She'd called first, asking permission, making sure I was up for company. I almost said no. The apartment was chaos. I looked like I hadn't slept in years, and I wasn't sure I could handle conversation beyond feeding schedules and diaper sizes. But something made me say yes. She arrived at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, impeccably dressed as always, carrying 3 wrapped boxes and a basket of expensive-looking prepared foods. "I remember what the first months are like," she said, setting everything on my kitchen counter. "You're probably living on crackers and desperation." I laughed despite myself. That's pretty accurate. She looked around the apartment, taking in the organized chaos. 3 bouncy seats in the living room, a changing station set up on the dresser, bottles drying on the kitchen counter. "You've created something wonderful here," she said quietly. "It's messy." "It's real." She turned to me. "May I meet them?" I led her to the nursery where all 3 babies were napping, a minor miracle that wouldn't last long. Catherine stood at the doorway, looking at them with an expression I couldn't quite read. "They're beautiful," she whispered. "What are their names?" "Lucas, Oliver, and Margaret." Her eyes filled with tears when I said Margaret's name. She would have been so honored. We moved to the living room, speaking quietly so we wouldn't wake the babies. "How have you been?" Catherine asked, settling into my armchair with practiced grace. "Tired, overwhelmed, but happy." I paused. "How's Victoria?" Catherine's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Victoria is adjusting to married life." That sounds ominous. She married a man she didn't really know, and she's discovering that the fantasy she built around him doesn't match reality. Catherine sighed. "She calls me 3 times a week, upset about something. He's too focused on his career. He doesn't help around the house. He's distant. He's not the attentive partner she expected." I could have told her that. She wouldn't have listened. She had to learn for herself. Catherine met my eyes. "He asks about you constantly, apparently. Whether Victoria has heard from you, whether anyone knows where you are, what happened to you after the wedding." My stomach tightened. "What does Victoria tell him?" "Nothing, because she doesn't know anything." "Neither do I, officially. This visit never happened, as far as anyone else is concerned." "Why are you here, Catherine?" She was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "Because Margaret asked me to watch out for you. Because I saw your strength at that wedding, showing up even though you were about to give birth, facing them both without flinching. And because," she paused, "because I have a daughter who made a terrible choice, and I see in you the life she could have had if she'd been braver." I wasn't brave. I was desperate. Bravery and desperation often look the same from the outside. Catherine smiled. "But regardless of what brought you here, you've built something real. And I wanted you to know that if you ever need anything, advice, resources, just someone to talk to, I'm here." "Why, you don't owe me anything." "No, but I owed Margaret, and she believed in you." Catherine stood to leave. "The boxes are gifts for the babies. Nothing extravagant, and there's a trust account I've established for their education. The details are in the envelope on top." "Catherine, I can't accept—" "You can, and you will. Margaret left you money to build a life. I'm ensuring her great-great-niece and great-great-nephews have the opportunities they deserve." Her tone left no room for argument. "Besides, it's my money. I can do what I want with it." After she left, I opened the boxes. Each contained a beautiful handmade baby book, bound in leather with spaces for photos and milestones and memories. The envelope contained paperwork for 3 trust accounts, each funded with $50,000 for future educational expenses. I sat on my couch, surrounded by baby gear and exhaustion and these impossible gifts, and cried. Not from sadness, from the overwhelming realization that I wasn't as alone as I'd thought. Margaret had given me money, Catherine was giving me support, Angela gave me her time and knowledge, and my children gave me purpose. I'd spent so long thinking I had to do everything alone that I'd forgotten that accepting help wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. 2 months after the babies were born, David showed up at my apartment building. The doorman called up to ask if I'd accept a visitor. David Chen says he's your ex-husband. And my first instinct was to say no. But I was tired of hiding, tired of wondering when this confrontation would happen. Send him up, I said. I had 5 minutes before he reached my floor. I quickly changed out of my spit-up stained shirt into something cleaner, ran a brush through my hair, and checked on the babies. All 3 were awake in their bouncy seats, content for the moment. When the doorbell rang, I took a deep breath and opened it. David looked different than he had at the wedding. Tired, thinner, less polished. He was wearing jeans and a sweater, his hair unstyled, his eyes shadowed with something that might have been guilt or exhaustion or both. "Sarah," he said, and his voice cracked slightly. "Thank you for seeing me. What do you want, David?" He looked past me into the apartment, and his eyes went wide. 3 baby seats. 3 babies. 3 tiny humans looking back at him with curious expressions. "Are those—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "My children." "Yes." "Are they—" He swallowed hard. "Are they mine?" I'd known this question was coming. I'd prepared for it during the long nights feeding babies, during the quiet moments when my mind wandered. I could lie. Tell him they weren't his. Protect them from ever having to know a father who'd abandoned them before they were born. Or I could tell the truth and deal with whatever came next. I looked at Lucas, Oliver, and Margaret, all 3 watching this stranger in their doorway with wide eyes. Then I looked at David and said, "Why does it matter?" "What?" "Why does it matter if they're yours?" I kept my voice calm, neutral. "You left me 8 months ago. You called me dead weight. You married someone else. You built a whole new life. Why do you suddenly care?" "Because if they're mine, I have responsibilities." "Rights?" "Rights." I almost laughed. "You think biology gives you rights? Where were you when I was terrified and alone? When I lost my job and couldn't pay rent? When I found out I was carrying 3 babies and had to figure out how to survive? You never told me you were pregnant. Because you left before I knew. And even if I'd known, why would I tell you? So you could resent me more? So you could accuse me of trapping you?" David flinched. "I wouldn't have—" "Yes, you would have. You made it very clear that I was holding you back from the life you wanted. 3 babies would have been an anchor you'd never forgive me for." He was quiet, and I could see him processing this, trying to find an argument and coming up empty. "I made mistakes," he said finally. "I know I did. But if those are my children, I want to be part of their lives. I want to do the right thing." The right thing? I felt something cold settle in my chest. "David, the right thing would have been not leaving your pregnant wife. The right thing would have been supporting me instead of blaming me. The right thing would have been being a partner instead of a scorekeeper." "I know, you're right. I was terrible." He stepped closer. "But I've changed. I've grown up. I want to make this right." "It's too late for that. Sarah, please. They deserve to know their father. They deserve a father who chose them, who wanted them, who was there from the beginning." I looked at my 3 babies, all of them perfect and innocent and completely unaware of this conversation. "You weren't there. You don't get to show up now and claim them because it's convenient." "I have legal rights," David said, and there was an edge to his voice now. "If they're mine, I can get a paternity test. I can go to court." "You could?" I agreed. "You could lawyer up, demand DNA tests, drag us all through the courts, and maybe you'd win some kind of visitation rights. But David, ask yourself, is that really what you want? To force your way into their lives? To be the father they're court-ordered to see? He looked at the babies again, and I saw something crack in his expression. They look like you, he said quietly. All three of them. Your eyes, your nose. Yes. Are they mine, Sarah? His voice was barely a whisper now. Please, just tell me the truth. I looked at Lucas, Oliver, and Margaret. At their perfect faces, their tiny hands, their complete trust that I would protect them from anything that could hurt them. And I made my choice. No, I said, they're not yours. David's face went through a series of expressions: relief, confusion, disappointment, suspicion. You're lying. Believe whatever you want, but I'm telling you they're not yours. And I'm not doing a paternity test. So you can either accept that and leave us alone, or you can spend money on lawyers and maybe force a test that will come back negative. Your choice. It was a lie, a big one, the kind that could explode in my face if he pushed. But as I looked at him standing in my doorway, at the man who'd left me, who'd blamed me, who'd moved on without a second thought, I knew I was making the right choice. These children deserved better than a father who showed up out of obligation or guilt. They deserved better than him. I don't believe you, David said, but his voice lacked conviction. Then get a lawyer, force a test. But David, think about what you're really asking for. Are you ready to be a father to triplets? Are you ready to co-parent with your ex-wife while married to someone else? Are you ready to explain to Victoria why you're suddenly involved with 3 babies that would prove you overlapped with her? He paled. Victoria can't know about this. Then I suggest you leave and pretend this conversation never happened. We stared at each other for a long moment. This isn't over, he said finally. Yes, it is. Goodbye, David. I closed the door in his face and locked it. Then I walked over to the babies and sat down in front of them, my legs shaking. Lucas made a small noise and I picked him up, holding him close. I'm sorry, I whispered to all 3 of them. I'm sorry I lied, but I promise you, I will never let anyone hurt you. Never. Margaret started fussing, and I picked her up too, settling both babies against my chest, while Oliver watched from his bouncy seat. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're making a mistake. I blocked it without responding. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived. It was from a law firm, requesting a paternity test on behalf of David Chen. I called Mr. Whitmore immediately. They can request it, he said calmly, but you don't have to comply without a court order. And getting a court order requires him to file a petition establishing grounds for paternity rights. Given that you've stated the children aren't his, he'd need to prove that you're lying, which is difficult without evidence. What if he pushes this? Then it becomes expensive and messy for everyone. But Sarah, I need you to be honest with me. Are these children his? I hesitated. If I answer that, are you required to disclose it? Attorney-client privilege protects our conversations, but I can't help you properly if I don't know the truth. Yes, I said quietly. They're his, biologically. Mr. Whitmore was quiet for a moment. I see. Well, that complicates things, but it's not insurmountable. If he forces a test and it comes back positive, we can argue abandonment, establish that you've been the sole provider and caregiver, and fight for primary custody with limited visitation. You have documentation of his abandonment, his texts, the fact that he remarried, the timeline. I don't want him to have any custody. I understand. But if he's the biological father and he pushes this, the courts will likely grant him some access. However, we can make it minimal, supervised, and contingent on him meeting certain requirements. We can make it expensive and difficult enough that he might decide it's not worth the fight. Do it, whatever it takes. Over the next 3 weeks, letters went back and forth between lawyers. David's attorney demanded a paternity test. My attorney demanded proof that David had standing to request one. David's attorney submitted evidence that he and I had been married during the conception period. My attorney submitted evidence that David had abandoned me, remarried, and shown no interest in the children until recently. It was exhausting, expensive, emotionally draining. But I refused to back down. Then, 4 weeks after David showed up at my apartment, his lawyer sent a final letter. Mr. Chen was withdrawing his petition. I called Mr. Whitmore immediately. What does this mean? It means he's giving up. He's not pursuing the paternity test or custody. Why? What changed? I can't be certain, but if I had to guess, his wife found out. 3 hours later, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Sarah? It was Victoria's voice, tight with emotion. This is Victoria Chen. We need to talk. I don't think we have anything to say to each other. Were you pregnant when you came to my wedding? I closed my eyes. Yes. Were those David's children? Victoria. Just answer the question. Her voice broke. Please. I need to know if my husband has 3 children he never told me about. I thought about lying, about protecting David's secret and keeping my children out of this mess. But then I thought about Victoria, newly married, discovering that her perfect life was built on lies. I thought about myself 8 months ago in her position, but without her resources or support. Yes, I said quietly. They're David's children, biologically. But he doesn't know them. He hasn't been part of their lives, and he never will be. Victoria was silent for so long, I thought she'd hung up. Then, thank you for telling me the truth. She disconnected. 2 days later, David called from a number I hadn't blocked yet. Sarah, please. I need you to tell Victoria this is a misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding. She's filing for divorce. She's leaving me. She says I lied to her, that I've been hiding children. You did lie to her. You tried to hide them. But I didn't know. Not really. Not until recently. You suspected the moment you saw me at the wedding, and you said nothing. You proposed paternity tests behind her back. You lied through omission for weeks. I felt surprisingly calm. This isn't my problem, David. This is yours. Please. If you just tell her they're not mine, I'm not lying for you anymore. I lied to protect my children, and I'd do it again. But I'm not protecting you. You're ruining my life. No, David. You ruined your own life. You left your pregnant wife for a woman with money, and now you're losing. Both. That's called consequences. I hung up. He tried calling back 6 more times. I blocked every number. The next week, Catherine called. I heard about Victoria's filing, I said before she could speak. I'm sorry. Don't be. She should have done it months ago. Catherine sounded tired but resolute. I wanted to let you know that she's not contesting David's withdrawal of the paternity petition. She wants nothing to do with this situation, which means he has no spousal support to fund a legal battle. So it's over? It's over. He has no legal claim to your children and no resources to pursue one even if he tried. Catherine paused. Sarah, I'm proud of you. You protected your children and you didn't let him manipulate you into making this easy for him. I just did what I had to do. That's what strength looks like. Margaret would be very proud. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment, the babies napping, and let myself feel the weight lift. It was really over. David was out of my life, out of the babies' lives. We were free. 6 months after the babies were born, I took them to the park across the street. It was spring, the air warm and sweet, and I had all 3 of them in the massive stroller I'd bought, the kind designed for triplets, wide enough to barely fit through doorways. Lucas, Oliver, and Margaret were alert now, taking in the world with wide eyes. They were starting to smile, to babble, to reach for things. They were becoming little people with personalities. Lucas was serious, observant, slow to smile but devastating when he did. Oliver was easygoing, happy to watch the world go by, content in almost any situation. Margaret was fierce, demanding, the first to cry when something wasn't right, and the first to laugh when something delighted her. They were perfect. We found a spot on a bench in the sun, and I took them out of the stroller one by one, letting them feel the grass, the breeze, the warmth of the day. A woman walking past stopped and smiled. Triplets, how wonderful, Are they your first? Yes, I said, smiling back. You must have your hands full. I do, but it's worth it. She moved on, and I sat there with my 3 babies, feeling the sun on my face, and thought about everything that had led to this moment. David leaving me, losing my job, finding out I was pregnant, Margaret's inheritance, the bed rest, the wedding, the birth, David trying to claim them, Victoria filing for divorce. All of it had brought me here, to this bench, with these 3 perfect humans who depended on me completely. I pulled out my phone and took a photo. Lucas chewing on a blade of grass, Oliver watching a bird fly past, Margaret gripping my finger with determination. Then I opened my messages and sent the photo to Angela, Catherine, and Mr. Whitmore with a simple caption. Thank you. Angela responded immediately, beautiful babies. Proud of you, Mama. Catherine's reply came a minute later. Margaret would be so happy. Call me this week. I have something to show you. Mr. Whitmore's response was characteristically professional. Wonderful to see them thriving. My door's always open if you need anything. I put my phone away and focused on my children. This was my life now. Not the life I'd planned, not the life I'd imagined when I married David. This life was harder, messier, more exhausting than anything I'd expected. But it was real. It was mine. And it was full of a love I hadn't known I was capable of feeling. David had called me dead weight. He'd said I was holding him back. He'd left me to chase a life he thought he deserved. And in doing so, he'd freed me to become someone stronger than I'd ever been with him. I wasn't the broken thing he'd left behind. I was a mother, a survivor, someone who'd fought for her children and won, someone who'd rebuilt her life from nothing and created something beautiful. David was living in a 1-bedroom apartment now, according to Catherine, working 2 jobs to pay his legal fees from the divorce. Victoria had gotten the penthouse, most of the assets, and her freedom. He'd lost everything chasing the wrong dream. And I'd gained everything by learning to chase nothing but my own peace. Lucas made a happy sound, reaching for a dandelion. I picked it and held it out to him, watching him examine it with intense focus. That's a flower, I told him softly. Pretty, right? He grabbed it and immediately tried to eat it. I laughed and gently extracted it from his mouth. Not food, buddy. Oliver wanted his own flower. Margaret just wanted to be held. I managed to juggle all 3, somehow. The way I'd learned to juggle everything in these past 6 months. 1 feeding at a time, 1 diaper at a time, 1 moment at a time. As I sat there, surrounded by my children in the warm spring sunshine, I realized something. I'd gone to David's wedding to prove I was okay, to show him I'd survived, to close a chapter. But the truth was simpler than that. I'd already been okay. I'd already survived. The wedding had just been the moment I realized it. David didn't break me. He freed me. And now, 6 months later, with 3 beautiful babies and a life I'd built from scratch, I understood what Margaret had known all along. I was always going to be fine. I just needed to believe it. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from an unknown number. I almost didn't check it, assuming it was David from yet another borrowed phone. But curiosity won. The message was simple. I saw you at the park. The babies are beautiful. You look happy. I'm sorry for everything. I hope you can forgive me someday. D. I looked up and scanned the park, but I didn't see him anywhere. He was watching from somewhere, hidden, too ashamed or too afraid to approach. Good. I deleted the message without responding. Then I blocked the number. David Chen had no place in this park, in this moment, in this life. I gathered up my 3 babies, loaded them back into the stroller, and headed home. Behind me, somewhere in the shadows, a man who'd made all the wrong choices watched the life he could have had roll away. Ahead of me, a sunny afternoon, a comfortable apartment, and 3 children who would never know they'd saved me just by existing. I'd arrived at David's wedding in a wheelchair, heavily pregnant, fighting to keep my babies safe for 1 more day. Now, I was walking through a park on a spring afternoon, my 3 healthy children with me, my life entirely my own. He'd panicked when he saw me that day, finally understanding what he'd lost. But his panic didn't matter. His regret didn't matter. Nothing about him mattered anymore. I'd won. Not by destroying him, not by taking revenge, not by making him suffer. I'd won by building a life he could never touch, by loving 3 children he'd never know, by finding peace he'd never understand. That was vindication, not in the loud, dramatic sense, but in the quiet certainty that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And as I walked home with Lucas, Oliver, and Margaret, I finally understood what freedom felt like. It felt like forgetting that David Chen had ever been part of my story. Because the story was never about him. It was always about me. And it was just beginning.